What's going on, guys? It's Brandon here, and hey, Brave New World just came out, and a lot of people are giving it hate. I, however, think the exact opposite, so in this video, I'm going to tell you why. Alright, before I get too deep into my video, this is kind of your buffer time to avoid spoilers of the movie, because in my video I do actually talk about some of the stuff and scenes from the movie specifically. So if you haven't watched it yet, pause this video, save it, go watch the movie, and then come back to this video. Alright, so in this video I'm going to break it down into three parts. First part is my overall opinion of the movie. Second part is why I believe so many people disliked the movie and it got a lot of negativity. And then my third part is what the movie sets forward, in my opinion, for the future of the MCU and what it has in store. So diving into the first part of this video, my personal take on it, and I really thought the movie was really good, especially for all the callbacks that it talks about in other movies and TV shows. One of the main ones that it calls back on so many is that first Incredible Hulk movie, that one way in Phase 1 after Iron Man that kind of helped catapult, in my opinion, the rest of the MCU into what it is today. You also got Eternals, where, hey, you got this ginormous Eternal just sitting there in the ocean and nobody talked about it. I mean, you get like a small little throwaway of it, and I think it was She-Hulk where you see it in like a small little article heading in a website thing, which, I mean, no one else really talks about it. And so it's nice that they talk about it in this movie, and the way they bring it in and talk about it is really great, because it kind of sets up some other things in the future. I'll talk about that in a little bit. And the last one I think it also kind of helps continue on with is the stuff that happened in Falcon and Winter Soldier, and I feel like those really helped set the tone for the movie as well. And so, talking about some of those callbacks a little bit more, if you're talking about the Incredible Hulk, I mean, you have Thaddeus Ross, which was in the movie. You have the leader, which was Samuel Stern, who ends up becoming the leader in that movie, and you kind of wonder what happened to him after that. And I mean, it was all the way back in 2008 when that movie came out, so there's a lot of things that can happen to him, and a lot of people probably maybe even forgot about him. So it was nice that they were able to bring him back into the live action world, which I thought was really cool. Also thought it was cool that like the song that played whenever he was hypnotizing people was Mr. Blue, and if you think back to the first Incredible Hulk movie, that was kind of his like call sign to the Hulk when they were like communicating, trying to work on making him become a regular human. So talking about a little bit more callbacks, you really get a lot more callbacks in with Civil War. First one being where he talked about Thaddeus Ross' heart attack. You actually see a little bit more of what goes into that, where he talks about how, like, where he went and got his surgery done, and that kind of sparked him into becoming the Red Hulk. I think it was kind of a little bit of a throwaway piece in Civil War. Not a lot of people probably paid attention to it, but I think kind of there's the point where you say, hey, from there, that's kind of when he's probably had the Red Hulk stuff in his system, and then this movie kind of just sparked it.
5 years ago, I had a heart attack. I dropped right in the middle of my backswing. It turned out it was the best round of my life, because after 13 hours of surgery and a triple bypass, I found something 40 years in the Army never taught me: perspective.
Another big thing that I think gets kind of talked about in the movie as well, not as much, but I think it's still kind of interesting, is the Sokovia Accords, because in Civil War, they're wanting everybody to sign it and all that, and then in this Brave New World, they're like, hey, I want you to rebuild the Avengers, and we're just going to kind of nullify the Sokovia Accords, essentially, which is really interesting to think, especially after everything that's happened with all the other movies since those Accords kind of went on, that you would wonder if they'd ever get rid of them, or you'd ever bring them up again in any type of movie.
You and I haven't always agreed on how much latitude enhanced individuals deserve. But what you've accomplished has given me reason to reconsider. Which is why I want you, Captain America, to help me rebuild the Avengers.
The Avengers.
Yes, sir.
Oh, with all due respect, sir, when you passed the Sokovia Accords, you tore the Avengers apart. Why the change of heart?
I represent all Americans now. Hell, half of them wouldn't even be here without the Avengers. The country needs this.
And when we disagree on how to manage a situation, what happens then?
Figure it out together.
And the last little bit of callback stuff that I really enjoyed about the movie is it kind of also helped us carry on the stuff that you saw from Falcon and Winter Soldier, because with how that series ended, you kind of really didn't know like what was going to happen to some of the characters and what was going to happen to them as far as being into the big screen movie time, or if they're going to make a second series of that movie. And so bringing in Isaiah Bradley and Joaquin Torres into the movie and kind of letting them develop a little bit more, I think is really cool, especially with Joaquin Torres' character, because you actually really see him transition from just being, hey, Captain America's help, to him actually potentially stepping into the role and taking over Falcon, which I think is really cool because it kind of just goes back to being more comic book accurate with how they are. And I think that's really cool that they're trying to stick back with comics and kind of give Sam his own, like, hey, he's Captain America, and he's saying, hey, you can have the Falcon status. One last reason why I thought this movie was really good is it finally gives Anthony Mackie the star, like, front center role that I think he kind of deserves. Because, I mean, he's been in other movies, but he kind of wasn't really the lead role. And in Brave New World, he is that lead role. I mean, he kind of was a assistant kind of help with Winter Soldier, where he kind of helped and that kind of introduced his character. And then in the other movies he's in, he kind of slowly develops a little bit more. I mean, he has that one brief appearance in Ant-Man, and then Civil War he shows up a little bit more, and then he helps out a little bit more in the Avengers movies. But he kind of doesn't really get his own thing till he gets his TV series with Falcon and the Winter Soldier, where there he's kind of also partnered with another kind of big role where they kind of both share the load of the screen time. But in Captain America Civil War, he's that main front centerpiece. Everything's about him, and it kind of just shows how good of an actor he really is. With that, now we're transitioning into the second part of this video, where why I personally think so many critics kind of really hated on this movie, and I think the real reason of it is a lot of those reshoots and kind of restructuring of the movie. I think that really kind of hurt, at least on the critic side, a lot, and kind of also changed what we really could have seen as an actual movie versus what we ended up with, which again, the movie was still great, but it just also wonders that, like, what would have happened if they kind of kept it how they originally did, and so guess we'll never know that one. And so talking with that a little bit more, if you didn't know, they changed a lot of things with the movie originally before it came out. One of the big things is it actually wasn't supposed to be a Brave New World. The actual original title that they had, and I think they actually showed it at Comic-Con and all that, was New World Order. Kind of interesting of why they changed the title of it. You read articles of why they changed it and all this other stuff, and I think it would have been interesting to actually keep that title, because then we could have seen the movie probably go in a little bit different direction. But again, when you kind of have things like that and it's a semi-political movie, people can get the wrong idea about it time and time again. Not only were there title changes, there were also a lot of character changes as well, with that being actual character changes, because you saw Giancarlo Esposito come and be Seth Volker, the leader of the Sorpian Society. It was originally Seth Rollins who was supposed to be in that role, and then during reshoots they kind of swapped those two people. There was an interview with Seth Rollins where he said that he didn't really know why they changed his role, and they gave him an opportunity to be another role, and it just really didn't work out, and so no one really ever knows the reason why they decided to do that change. I really personally didn't think it was a problem. I think Giancarlo Esposito was really good in his role in that. I mean, because you think about all of his stuff from Breaking Bad and countless other things he's been in, he kind of fills the role of playing that character very well. So not only were there physical actor and actresses changes, there were also a lot of changes to characters that were different than what they originally are in comic books and movies that they were wanting to portray them. Real one being, if you look at the leader, Samuel Stern, he was supposed to be this dude with like a big ginormous green head, and when you see him in the movie, he kind of looks like a Walking Dead zombie that got touched with like VeggieTale green broccoli on his head. And some people are wondering, well, why did they make that change? And you actually see like posters, and you even came out with a Funko Pop of him before they kind of made this final decision. And I think real reason why they kind of went away from that is if you think back to Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania, where a lot of people really didn't like how MODOK turned out, where that was really how he's supposed to be comic book accurate. And so I feel like a lot of people were like, well, if they really didn't like that and we try and make the leader kind of comic book accurate, it may not turn out so well, and a lot of people may hate us on that, and they'd be like, hey, well, we made him comic book accurate, like, what more could we do? So not only was there that change to the leaders like appearance and whatnot, they also kind of changed the Sabra character as well. She in the movie ends up being like a former Black Widow assassin, have not, kind of like Natasha and all those other ones you've kind of seen in previous movies. And originally in the comic books, she's supposed to be like this Israeli mutant superhero, and with a bunch of political backlash and stuff like that. I think that's one reason why they kind of changed her to that, which I think it would have been interesting because, again, the hint of mutants in the movie, which again I'll talk about in the next part a little bit, I think would have made it a little bit more interesting, and I think they could have moved with the mutants into the MCU possibly a little bit faster with her being the character that she was supposed to be. But nevertheless, I think with them kind of changing that, kind of really took her role of what she was to a much minor role than what it could have been. And again, before I talk about what I think all this movie sets up for the future in the MCU, talking about those reshoots again, a lot of them you could really see that it kind of changed, I think, a little bit the tone of the movie. Of you could tell something was supposed to be really different than what ended up being in theaters. Really with that being, there's a big funeral scene that when you look at some of the trailers, that was the big like point of a movie, with like a funeral where Betty Ross ends up showing up and all that, and you really don't see that anymore. The only piece you really see is Harrison Ford's character shows up at a funeral, or the grave of his wife, but there's no actual funeral scene. I think that meant that they were going to kill off the Red Hulk character, and I think if you do that, that's kind of bags. You had a really good idea of the Red Hulk character, and it took you so long to hint at that in other movies, and you just give him one big movie and kill him off. I don't think that would have been such a great idea. Two other reshoots that I think kind of also changed how the movie could have turned out was the scene where the leader actually turns himself in. It's kind of interesting that you see in the trailers there was a part where he's wearing like a big Uncle Sam hat, and he looks like he's about to be in front of a hospital, and so that could have made his tone a little bit different. And also, you see other trailers where he was actually out taking pictures of Sam, Isaiah, and Joaquin Torres when they went into the White House before Isaiah Bradley tries to assassinate the president. And so it kind of gives a different meaning of, hey, how was the leader? Like, was he actually stuck in prison the whole time, or was he actually out roaming around before the movie? Which, I mean, you never really know how they decided to go with the character. And the last big scene that I think was really obvious, and it really kind of made critics kind of not like the movie, was the big end fight scene at the very end after Captain America and the Red Hulk were duking it out, and he's like, hey, is he down? Is he gonna get back up? And you see that the Hulk gets back up, but he's hurt, and then Sam makes that really moving speech to him, and I think in that scene you can really tell that, like, hey, the Hulk's here, and Sam's here, but you could tell that was shot in like two completely different areas, which for me really didn't ruin the movie too much. You could just tell it was shot different, so you could tell that really probably wasn't what they wanted to do there, but I still liked the kind of message that it led to it, and it kind of helped say, hey, like, let's bring the Hulk like back down to him being a regular person. So before I get into my part of what I think this movie sets up for the rest of the MCU, let me know down in the comments what you thought about the movie. Did you enjoy it? What parts did you enjoy? Or were you kind of like the critics where they're like, this movie wasn't great? And what parts kind of made it not great for you? I'd love to hear those down in the comments. Alright, so what this means for future movies in the MCU going forward. I really think there's a lot of things they can do. First one being they could actually like launch a World War Hulk movie, because I mean you have the Hulk we have Red Hulk now, we have She-Hulk, and at the end of She-Hulk you saw that the Hulk had a son, so there's 4 Hulks right there on Earth that you could kind of say, well, what's going to happen to them, and where did they originally come from, or where like is their home world? There's so many possibilities you can do there. Some other things you can also do movie wise is with all those big bads that are in the raft itself. I mean, because you have the leader there, you have Zemo from the Winter Soldier, and from Falcon and Winter Soldier, he's at the raft. A lot of people didn't notice him in the post-credit scene or the end-credit scene, but he is actually back in the raft. And from what Marvel told us, that everything from Daredevil, Luke Cage, and Jessica Jones and the Defenders is canon in the MCU. You also have all those bad characters that ended up being transported onto the raft that could really make a big superhero like villain movie possible. Lastly, what I think this sets up for future in the MCU is the Avengers Doomsday and Avengers Secret Wars, because I mean with the leader in his post-credit scene talking about essentially incursions and having to fight other superheroes from different dimensions, it kind of just again tees up all that stuff that's going to be happening in Secret Wars, and I think that kind of alludes to me personally what could possibly be a post-credit scene in the new Fantastic Four movie that's coming up, or it could even also help set up things that are could be possibly a post-credit scene in the Thunderbolts, because I think, if I'm right, I think Thunderbolts does come before Fantastic Four, or it could be vice versa. Nonetheless, I think that that post-credit scene for Brave New World can kind of help catapult those two movies' post-credit scenes that much further. So that is my take on Captain America Brave New World. Again, like I said, let me know down in the comments what you thought of the movie, and if you kind of agree with what I thought or disagreed with it, I'd love to hear it all down in the comments. And if you also like this video, make sure you hit like and subscribe, because I've kind of enjoyed doing this review, and I'm kind of planning on doing some other reviews in the future, and if there's any ones you want me to review, you can leave it down in the comments. And so until next time, stay magical.